The last 24 hours has set a number of records for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It was the third largest day in history. This is on the verge now of breaking into a new all-time high for the average true range of the bar. And typically this means it sends it into outer space. This is what happens every single time in the past. Plus, yesterday we saw the largest liquidations of shorts in history. We saw a massive record number of nearly $500 million of shorts. And generally, when we get these massive liquidation days, it is a fantastic sign of a reversal. And this is specifically what we went through in yesterday's video. So very happy that you guys joined the video.
Look, I hate to do it, but I will do it. I would give myself an A+.
And you said it keeps you nice and level-headed on those extreme days. And this is going to continue even more so for Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and the stock markets. It's from this point forward that things get even more volatile. We're seeing it across the board with all of the indicators I'm about to go through in today's video with you. So as you said, if you find value, as you guys said yesterday, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We've got heaps to get through today with you with the stock markets, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the real estate cycle. It's your home of macro cycle analysis. Now, quick shout out to TIA Premium. If you guys do want to get into your trading portfolios and your long-term investing portfolios, the link is in the video description for TIA Premium. Michael doing some fantastic jobs here looking at trades in real time with our members. Massive short here on the big crash yesterday and explaining it as we go. So that's what we do there in TIA Premium. Just a little quick snapshot. Heaps of courses to get through, but it's all laid out in a very systematic way so that you can get through it relatively quickly. Over to BTC and the price action from yesterday. Obviously, we saw a flash crash. It was put down to a number of things. People referenced the tariffs. They referenced the Bank of Japan. They referenced anything, right? But at the end of the day, the charts were down. We saw the lower swing tops forming before the day down. We saw the lower lows, so lower highs and lower lows. And we also saw the market sentiment basically dying off from November. So over 2 months with the market sentiment dying off from that point. So it wasn't ready for a massive move to the upside. I mean, that's what we've been talking about for months here. And from there, well, yesterday we saw a nice big flush out across the board. Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and the stock markets also took a nice fair hit there. And that's essentially what I want to see, at least for my own analysis, and that's why you guys are here. I want to see flush outs, especially when things get a little bit too overheated. We saw a lot on the back of the sentiment. You know, things were just staying too greedy for too long. Now, has the market done enough? Have we seen enough of a dump here to refresh the fear and greed index? So there are signs that it is possible it has done enough, a lot better than it was back a month ago. Doesn't mean that this is entirely over yet. Just like we saw back in 2021, you can see a few spikes to the downside, and then it can still head up before a massive correction. But I'm not getting too concerned, too far ahead of ourselves there, because what is different here, and it's not about this time is different, it's just to add in the indicators, is that we saw extreme liquidations yesterday and over the last 24 hours. So those last 2 days there, the 2nd of Feb and the 3rd of Feb, now that we're on the 4th of Feb, huge liquidations in the market, which also help towards the market sentiment resetting. Now, on the flip side to that, we have seen a drop off in the last 24 hours after that nice big spike there of the search interest for Bitcoin and crypto. So those search terms there. And essentially all I'm waiting for here is for this to bottom out again and spike back up. And I think that will then send the markets again. You'll start to see a sending of your altcoins, sending of BTC, potentially even a sending of Ethereum, as we'll get to in a sec, along with plenty other altcoins that I'll have a look at here. But essentially that interest has died off just at least in the last several hours. On top of that, we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence in the last, well, at least on the 2nd of February in the exchange volume. So again, we need to see the exchange volume also push back to new fresh highs. At the moment, we're back in higher lows, which is a good sign, but still lower highs. So over the next 1 to 2 days, the next bit of data will come through here. Let's see if it's already refreshed for the day. So I've refreshed the page again, but there's still no update for at least the 3rd of February. We only have the data there for the 2nd. So that was the fear and greed index. It is looking a lot better than it has done over the last couple of months. So I'm pretty happy about that. I'm pretty happy about the volume also picking up on that bar that we saw yesterday. And I'm also pretty happy about the higher lows that have formed. I'm pretty happy about the big, strong close to the upside. This indicator here makes me believe that we're going to see more fresh faces and we're going to see more volatility. As I said in the intro, this is pretty big down below because it's the average true range of the bars. Now, if you take a look back at the previous cycle for BTC, so we come back to these tops, there's the all-time high from 2017, draw a nice straight line across here, and then we can also drag this down and look at those previous tops in 2019 and before the breakout in 2020. Once it did break through into fresh highs, it basically skyrocketed. And you can put the line back at the all-time high. It continued to skyrocket from there. It hit some support and then obviously it faded off. But that's over the course of 12 months of pretty volatile times. Like, this is pretty extreme volatility considering where the market had come from. So comparing it to this. So yeah, basically my point here is that we're seeing the market attempt to do similar things. Now you've got the tops looking like they are breaking out of the average true range. The average true range is essentially just the size of the bars. And as I said, for yesterday's bar, this was the third largest bar in Bitcoin history, and really third just to the, well, by $100 it's third. The second place is $100 larger, and then the first place is $2,000 larger than yesterday's bar. So if that's going to be the case, I think you've got to get used to seeing this style of bar come up often, not rarely, but often now, and that is going to be $11,500. So basically 5-figure bars as we start to head higher and higher. Now, of course, there's always disclaimers on that. Like, it's got to get through this diagonal resistance level. The other good signs here are that you've got this the breakout, the retest to that average true range line here. This is sitting around $3,500 bars, and then we've pushed a little higher. So if you start to see this come down, I wouldn't be too concerned yet. It's still above that 3,500, and even if it were to break 3,500, provided we continue to see higher and higher lows form for the average true range of the bar, I would then still be pretty comfortable with where things are progressing from this point for BTC. So this is looking healthy. This is looking healthy. The market structure, the price action is looking healthy. What have we seen from Trump over the last 24 hours? Trump pauses Mexico-Canada tariffs, Musk's treasury, yada, yada, role questioned. So we've seen the tariff thing. I guess people would say that it's working. I don't want to know. I don't really care what other people's opinions are about this. What we're seeing in terms of the market, that's what I care about. Like, what is the market thinking? Because at the end of the day, that's where you put your money. You're not putting your money on what Joe Blow says down the road about what he thinks about the tariffs and what he thinks about Trump. It's like, what does the market think? Well, the market was freaked out at first, but then it closed relatively strong. So my chart here shows, well, everyone's got this chart, but you can see here was a fantastic example of the quote, amateurs control, did I spell that right? Amateurs control the open and professionals control the close. So if you're used to seeing candles, here you go. I prefer bars because that's the way I learnt. There is the open down here. There is the close. Amateurs freaked out on the open, dumped the market, and then the professionals came back and controlled the close. I think that is a fantastic example of this particular quote. So if you find yourself freaking out in these markets, especially on the open, then just take a step back and ask yourself about this quote here. Am I acting like a professional or am I acting like an amateur? Sometimes there are causes to be concerned, and that's if you see the professionals controlling the close and they are dumping it. And that is similar to the tops, right? And we have a couple of those examples coming up. Essentially, as if you see the amateurs come in and it's basically gapped right up, and then the professionals come in and the whole day spends going down. It still might be above the previous day's open, but the professionals spent the entire day selling that market off into the hype of the amateurs. The next thing that we've seen from Trump over the last 24, 48 hours is him signing an order establishing a sovereign wealth fund. So the SWF, Sovereign Wealth Fund, which he says may be there to buy TikTok. If that is going to be an income producing asset for the US, fantastic as part of the sovereign wealth fund. I guess some could argue that maybe that sounds a bit socialist, but at the end of the day, it should be in a wealth fund and the citizens should be making money from their assets. In particular, more so like commodities that you have coming out of the ground, like what Norway has done. If you're unfamiliar with that, Norway has a sovereign wealth fund. I believe it owns like a percent or something crazy of almost every single stock on the US stock exchange. I mean, if it has the ETFs of the S&P 500, it has a frig off big chunk of that. And that's Norway, right? It's smaller than the majority of states in the US. It owns a lot of money there because they have a shit ton of oil out of the Arctic. Australia, if you're Aussies watching this, we should have something like that. But no, our government does stupid things. We'll leave that for another day. And that doesn't matter whether it's left or right. I mean, we could have a sovereign wealth fund and we have a ton of assets coming out of the ground and we wouldn't have to pay taxes. That would all come from those commodities. Anywho, let's move on from that and look at what's coming up next. So hopefully that's what Trump is looking to do, because that would be fantastic for the citizens of the US. You basically cut all your taxes and the wealth fund is actually producing income for you. And I believe, and getting to my point here for the markets, I believe the markets have seen that as a relatively good sign. So some would argue that, oh, well, it was the tariffs or it was the Bank of Japan increasing interest rates and that freaked out the market a couple of weeks later. Or yesterday it was the tariffs, that happened within 24 hours. At the end of the day, the market has still found support at the 50% level. So it's 6,000 points. And we're now seeing the sovereign wealth fund. So if that's the case, maybe the sovereign wealth fund will buy some US companies. Maybe it will go into investing into the commodities. Maybe they're going to chuck on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptos into that sovereign wealth fund. We don't know. It hasn't happened yet. You've got, what's his name? Eric Trump talking about now's a great time to add ETH. Is he saying add ETH to your portfolios? Is he saying add ETH to the sovereign wealth fund? Is he saying add ETH to the strategic Bitcoin reserve and a crypto reserve? What is he saying? Is he saying adding to his own portfolio? Who knows, right? That's the whole point of X. No one knows what the fuck anyone's talking about there. And then back to the point of the sovereign wealth fund, it seems like the market sees it as another good sign of higher prices to come. Next up is the volatility that I talked about in the intro. As trade wars start and stop, and of course other things that go on with what Trump says day to day, volatility is soaring and the S&P is swinging 1 trillion, not a billion, but it's swinging $1 trillion per day. The S&P 500 is valued at around $50 trillion, so 1 trillion is about 2%. I mean, it often does less, but it can do up to that 2-3% sometimes a day. That's a lot of volatility. And as we've talked about now for years here on the channel, the 18.6-year cycle encapsulates this perfectly, with the winner's curse phase being the highest volatility phase of the cycle. Now, I didn't know Trump was going to come in. I thought it was going to be who was it? Harris, right? But at the end of the day, it was always going to be volatile because we're in the winner's curse phase. And Trump exacerbates that as well. People get emotional with Trump, with whatever he says, and that is going into the markets now. And we're seeing that day to day, just these sort of swings when he comes out with something. So that is a sign that we are here. Another major, major sign that we are in this final stage. I like that. It all makes sense. It's coming together. So a good point to remember, the volatility is going to be normal. Get used to it, and especially with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. For the market sentiment on the S&P 500, it did drop just into fear over the last 24 hours. Yesterday was neutral. So, you're seeing the sentiment continue to remain in that zone there between fear and neutral, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's not getting too greedy or too hyped up, although the prices are still trading very close to previous all-time highs. All-time high is 61.60 and it's trading at 6,000. The SPX, all-time high, 61.30, and it's trading at just a couple of bucks short of 6,000. The NASDAQ, just underneath the 50%, so slightly weaker here. Still putting in slightly higher lows, and the market really hasn't gone anywhere over the last 2 months, but it's also just trading a few percent away, 4.5% away from a previous all-time high. So yeah, basically all part of this at the end stage. Get used to it. It's going to be volatile leading into the peak. The other thing that comes with these end stages are more and more big headlines. Stocks tend to go higher, even with bad news. This is what is meant by a wall of worry. You hear bad stuff all the time. Just, you can pause this, read it for yourself. There's always something bad, supposedly, or actually going on in the world, but just how bad is it? That's up to you, the viewer, who may or may not get sucked into the news headlines. I mean, this all goes on, and some things matter more to other people than they do to others. But at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're trading the market. So you gotta look at what do the markets actually think is the most important thing to be looking at. DXY, which is a massive one for risk assets. And yesterday, the amateurs controlled the open, professionals controlled the close. So this was the better example here, which is also going to help for Bitcoin and cryptos. Look at that, a big pump up, fell short of a fresh high, so 110, and basically closed down underneath even the previous day's close. So a big sell-off there. Now, of course, we haven't seen it break the swing lows here at 107, so I'll hold my horses there. But it is a relatively weak-looking day, especially with how it started out and then how it's ended up there. So that's the sort of bar that you'd look at and say amateurs controlled that open and professionals controlled the close, and that was in reverse to what's happened with the risk assets like Bitcoin, some cryptos, and of course in the case of the S&P, that also closed up relatively well too. Now, if you subscribe to the free Crypto and Economic Report, you will receive that in about the next 3 to 6 hours. So keep a lookout for that in your emails. But I wanted to make a mention here. I did start a new Instagram.
Is that a joke? Oh.
Follow me over there. It's just lifestyle stuff. But I just wanted to show you that there is a real one of mine, and it is very basic right now, right there. So I've just begun that. That's a birthday post from me so that you know which one to find. I ended up going with Mr. Pizzino because someone took Pizzino, so I wasn't able to keep that as a name there. But I'll leave that in the comment section, the video description if you want to go and follow that. Otherwise, go and follow the X and only use the official links down below. Don't get scammed out there, and don't fall for anyone trying to DM you or message you about something. All right, these are the official links, and I'll leave the official link for my new Instagram, Mr. Pizzino, in the video description. Monthly returns for Bitcoin are still on track. Everyone's looking out for a green February at this point. Yesterday also helped with that pretty strong close there. The returns, you're looking at about 11 out of 14 times, giving you a 78.5% chance. Basically the best month for the entire year for BTC. Let's see whether that remains. As for altcoins, they may be in the process of a number one or a number two. No doubt a lot of people took a number two yesterday, absolute massive bogs of number twos. But as you can see from the previous move down, and essentially I'm just highlighting a pattern here that the markets tend to do. You see these big flush outs, and then the market's held up for quite a period of time. The difference between the lows is not that much. In a percentage, it can still be 50%, but coming down from the top, that might be 60 or 70%, and then from that point could be another 50. But from the top all the way down, maybe that's 80% total. So when I'm looking at these lows, it may not be that much of a difference considering where it's come from, but in terms of time, that could be another thing. Now, if this is more like a number two, and it's the end of the move, people got absolutely destroyed, that was a number one there, this might be a number two, then what happens next, I think, is we'll see a higher low form, and if that higher low forms on more fear, so basically take a look at what's going on with X and, Reddit or Discords or wherever you might find yourself in your basement reading internet articles and all that sort of jazz, just have a look at what the sentiment is like should we come back down to the low. A perfect example of this was Bitcoin in September. So we had the August dump, big dump down to 49K, nice spike back up, and then a month later. So this took a fair bit of time. I'm not saying it has to take a month this time. Maybe it takes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because if things are starting to speed up towards the end of the cycle with more of that volatility, it might be a little quicker here. But nonetheless, this took a month, and into this September low, I posted multiple times, obviously YouTube videos and also on X, around these days here. And this was getting extremely emotional. People were just expecting this to happen again, because they were like, well, it's all higher lows, all lower lows. Right here, we're expecting it to come back down. And the talk was 38, back to this low here. The talk was back down into the 30s and breaking of this low here. They were talking about this whole game was over, and it was a left translated cycle, meaning that Bitcoin had peaked and that was the end of the game. I've seen a little bit of that now, but nothing like what we saw back in September of 2024. So this is what I think happens next. We see a higher low, and from that higher low, you'll get extreme fear, not necessarily on the crypto fear and greed index, but you'll see it across the board in terms of the sentiment from people and how they respond to the markets, how they are thinking of the markets, how they're feeling of it, what they're saying about their portfolios. Potentially something like this, actually. This was on my recent YouTube videos a couple of days ago. Most of the alts are effed, don't want to DCA anymore, tired and frustrated to see my alts. Don't blame you, I feel the same. Seems like Bitcoin dominance is not going to drop much this cycle. This is the whales want patience. That's trying to lift the spirits up here. It's not coming. If alts don't go up a ton this month, then it's never happening. That's the sort of thing that you typically see even at a higher low. And if I get back to my Bitcoin chart, those higher lows are perfect places to enter the market. Now, you could get sucked in, not necessarily sucked in, but you might be buying through here, right? And then the market goes down. And at this point, you go, shit, I bought the dip too early, it's going to collapse again, and you start to get out of your positions only to see it a few days later back to where you bought it, and then it puts in a high low and then continues on from there. So this is a tricky part if you've bought here, but if you haven't bought on the way up, like kind of where we are now, and it falls into one of these and you get this little higher low forming, that is the absolute safest time to be entering the market with some of the lowest risk. I'll say it again. That is one of the best times to be entering the market, one of the safest times with some of the lowest risk, because you've got an anchor point behind you, pretty good volume, just like what we're seeing now, pretty good volume. You've got a reasonable anchor point here, and the market sentiment just absolutely craps the bed, yet the price is higher. So you're getting a divergence between the price and what the market is feeling, right? So the price is holding up, the smart money is holding the game up, yet the dumb money is freaking out and shitting the bed at the worst possible time. That is the easiest time. Now, I've been on, we've been doing this for years now on the channel. That was the exact same thing that I talked about on X and on YouTube back here in March of 2023. So nearly 2 years ago, that was the same thing that happened. Very similar pattern. You had higher lows and the market sentiment was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Those of you that were here saw it happen in real time. Everyone thought there was a recession. You had some of the biggest, best names, analysts of YouTube and X and all that sort of stuff, pretty much saying that the game was over from there. The stock market and everything was collapsing. And that's why it was much, much easier to buy there, because the fear and emotions were disgusting. It was over, yet the price was much higher. And then a few days later, you had this big pump up, and they were still all questioning it. They were saying, it's not possible. It's going to collapse at some point. Here's a double top. Then it got to this point. Here's a triple top. It's going to collapse at this point. And they go, see, I was right. So this is what I'm watching out for in terms of what might happen next. If it does happen, it wouldn't be surprising if we get another couple of shakeouts here, as I've talked about with the fear and greed index. If it does hit the fear a little bit longer, maybe the extreme fear, and then puts in a higher low, I still see the macro cycle as being up. And I'm waiting for one of these sorts of signs to happen. Look, I've got to add in there, maybe it doesn't happen like that and we just basically shoot straight up. Is that what the bulls want? Is that what you want? If you're fully loaded, you don't have any more money to add in, you're basically fully invested and you just want to see this thing go up? Maybe. So look, I'll be on the lookout, see if we get one of these high lows happen in a relatively strong position on some good technicals there as well. Now, over to the cryptocurrencies. And yeah, essentially that was the pattern there we're looking at. This one here was ADA, right? So is ADA in that sort of state right now? It dropped down to 50 cents from a high of $1.32. So, something like 60 or 70% drop. The USDT market cap also looks pretty damn good. USDT dominance here had a huge spike above the level of bearishness here. So if it goes up, very, very bearish for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and it absolutely dumped and closed down here below 4.4%, which was that diagonal. So that's a really, really good day for Bitcoin altcoin bulls, ideally under 4.2%, and we attempt to break 3.7, 3.8% yet again. For now, it's still back in this zone, so anything can happen. We might see a little bit of a move here to the upside, a weak move, and that would be your higher low for Bitcoin and altcoins, and then maybe it collapses out of bed. This is the game. If it can get here, that is going to be where things go absolutely wild. And it could be ETH's time, it could be XRP's time again, it could be Sui and Sol's time again. You got Eric Trump, as I showed earlier, tweeting about ETH. I don't think he's going to stop. You've got ETH doing relatively good things. This was where the tweet came out. It was either here at 5 a.m. my time or 8 a.m., but either way, it was pretty much at the end of the V-shaped recovery. So how much emphasis or how much spin does Eric have for the price of ETH? I don't think very much if it's either at these points, because that was the exact time. You can see 8 a.m. This is the 8 a.m. bar here, basically at the top. So it was a sell the news event. That's on the hourly chart. Let's have a look at the daily here. Overall, the smart money bought this thing up pretty damn hard. It's hit all the targets now down to 150%. So that's $2,100 to $2,200. We can, yes, we can now delete this particular tool. Yes, remove them. And we are now looking for closes above 2,900. Another massive thing about this bar is that it had a huge, huge volume, and it closed back above all these previous tops at $2,700. So that was the previous support area, right? 27, 2750, 2,800, and it closed above that. So far, so good. Got to get back above this swing low here at 2,950, and then ideally above that 50% level at around 3,100. But it's done pretty damn good things over that last 24 hours. That's probably one of the biggest bars for ETH in this entire bull market, $778, basically $100 short of the exact low price back in June of 2022. It did it all in one day there. So massive, massive day. Things are looking okay. Bitcoin and Ethereum, or ETH BTC pairing, still has not. I mean, it needs to get back above these swing bottoms, and this is where I'm looking for an overbalance in time and price. That is at 3.8%, back above this diagonal. So it hasn't done enough yet, but this has gone a lot faster into that low. So the speed of the dump has increased. Potential double bottom here with the December 2020 low. That's back at around 2.2%. Move this out so we can see. So we could be in for some sort of double bottoming here. And that was similar to what happened with XRP BTC. Let's have a look at XRP BTC. Back here in November 2024, had a little bit of a mini double bottom there with June 2024 as well. Massive, massive move to the upside. We've seen a huge swing yesterday, but so far has been able to close above these swing lows at 2,800 Satoshis. But over to the XRP USD, had a nice close here above $2.60 after collapsing 47% from the high, hitting $1.80. So has it done enough yet? I mean, the market will tell us that. It's a pretty good volume bar, pretty good close. Ideally, some closes above the previous old all-time high would basically cement that as the low. For now, you just got to keep playing the game. Maybe you got a little more downside here into a higher low with some, like I showed you before, with that more fear coming into the sentiment, and another good time to buy, or we start to see it just die off and then take off a little bit later. You're also seeing Solana do similar things here. Nice panic bar down again. It's stemmed from a panic move to the upside, crash into a panic move to the downside, and then you had a panic move into a top, and now we're seeing another panic low. And typically from these panics, they are reversal points. So we could be in for a reversal here, and then you would just look to your next levels at the 50%. So high to low and 235. So some close above 235, 250 ideally, previous tops and the previous bottoms. That's going to be a nice stronger position for Solana moving forward. Sui has surprised me here with a big, big, big push to the upside. However, still falling short of $4. So that's the thing I'm watching now. You've got huge volume, nice reversal bar. It's tested 50%, closed above it, and 55% to the downside, very similar to the previous crash. So now I'm looking out for this rally into a lower high and getting rejected either here at $4 or maybe a little higher at 420, 450, and then continuing to fall back from that point. That will lead into another higher low and get ready for a nice big pump to the upside. So I still think there's a lot more left in it. I just don't, left to the upside. I just don't know if there's any more left to the downside, if it can go a little bit lower into a higher low here. The other thing to note is that it did test the previous old all-time highs and then bounced pretty strongly. Now, another interesting point is that SUI bounced off the previous old all-time highs back at around 230 and then bounced pretty damn hard. It did that last time as well. There's about 90 cents. There were those previous highs, not an all-time high, but it tested those previous highs, rallied and failed, and then fell for the next few months. But that's not a big deal because it did a 10x from that point. So let's see how it performs over the coming, I'd say days to weeks, to see whether it gets rejected here and falls into a higher low or a lower low, and then is able to push higher. Ideally, I don't think it should go below the previous tops here around $2 to $2.20, $2.30 to maintain a position of strength. Just consolidate and then push higher from that point. PEPE has also hit the diagonal uptrend here, doing it 72% as we looked at yesterday, but still in a slightly weaker position here. Ideally back above 1450, which is a 50% level and the swing top, and an important swing low to get above. So that's essentially telling you that there is some strength back in the market. Otherwise, they could all lead to lower highs that then fail again. It's typical of what the markets do. You can end up with a lot of these lower highs. You see these bounces, it fails at the previous swing bottoms and drops off again. Tests it, fails again, tests it, fails again. So, that's why I bring those up there. Just watch for those swing tops, swing bottom there, and that's through the 50%. So I think that's going to be an important level for PEPE to show its strength. And the last one, which I didn't get to yesterday, here it is, Dogecoin. Now where are we? Monday. We're on a weekly chart here. It's sitting dead on the 50% level at 28 cents. So a nice big spike bottom and a rebound there to close above the 50%. It did do a 58% correction. This is your extension range from the low to the high. And that's an important pivot point there. So far, Doge has done relatively good things, coming back down, testing those previous tops. In some cases, some of these look like they're in one. In a lot of the cases, they look like they might be at their 2 point. Doesn't mean it's going to boom straight from here. It could, but even if you've got a bit of patience, you see this higher low form, that would be an absolute banger place to get into some of these alts. USDT dominance is still my favorite chart of the day. I love how it's closed underneath these levels. This one is the one I'm looking forward to the most, breaking down from this 3.8, 3.7%. Make sure you're here when that happens. Like, subscribe to the channel. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, obviously let me know and smash up that like button here, and the links in the video description for my new tiny little Instagram account, and of course X as well. Other links there for Bybit. You've got the crypto debit card, Bluffin 100K bonus this month in February. Use this link here, and I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Until then, take care and peace out.